crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people living as hoes. Yeah, but maybe.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I am Mike Graham, and I'm delighted to say that as we enter Valentine's Day, I'm joined by one of the great romantics of the modern era, Mr. Mike Porky Parry. Very good morning to you.
A very good morning to you, Mike, and you're right, I am romantic. Now, romantic, it can have many different interpretations. I'm not saying that I've spent my life bended on one knee, asking young ladies to...
Well, you don't get that low, do you? They'd hardly see you if you got any lower.
Wasn't he witty at this time in the morning? Such a joy to be here. I was about to say that doesn't necessarily mean that you are, in pursuit of
pleasures of the flesh,
the female form for all your life. What I'm saying is I have a romantic attitude towards life. I like the romance of success. I like the romance of failure. I like the romance of excitement and adventure.
Failure.
Well, there is a romance
about failure.
Romance about failure. If a man tries to climb Mount Everest and fails 12 feet from the summit because he gets frostbite in his fingers and has to come back, that's romantic, isn't it?
No,
of course it is.
I wouldn't say it's
Of
romantic.
course it is. That's very romantic.
I could use a lot of other adjectives, but romantic wouldn't be one of them.
I think it is very romantic to have that sort of will and spirit in life. If a man tries to row the Atlantic single-handed, but just as he's about to enter New York Harbour, his oar breaks and he finds himself going round in circles, he's only got one oar, that's romantic because it's
great
great
never had any
fun.
success with women. I mean, if that's your idea of romance, I mean, it's not entirely surprising you've remained single your entire life.
Come on, you're a man of letters and words. There is romance with a capital R, and that is
There's romance in adventure, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, and romance with a small R, which as well. What a romantic story. If some bloke, like for instance, that guy Kangaroo Dundee down in Australia.
Crocodile Dundee.
No, Kangaroo Dundee. This man's dedicated his life to saving little kangaroos.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. All these kangaroos get knocked. Like in Australia, you have rhubars on your car because some of the roads in Western Australia in particular, in the Northern Territories, are made of shale.
Right.
Now, if you're driving along and a kangaroo jumps in front of you, if you swerve to try and miss them, you'll turn your car over and come off the gravel
road.
road.
Apparently they jump quite often because they move so fast. They actually jump on your bonnet sometimes.
Yeah, that's
as they're crossing the road.
That's right. So you're taught, it's part of the Australian driving test that if a kangaroo jumps in front of you, not that it happens much in Sydney and Melbourne, but it does happen out in the outback, you've just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And bang, the kangaroo goes boing.
Well, kangaroos are big. That would damage the car, wouldn't it?
And they bounce. But anyway, this fellow called Chris Barnes is known as Kangaroo Dundee. He goes around rescuing little joeys, which are in the pouches of kangaroos which have been killed at the roadside, and he's got a kangaroo... Sanctuary, thank you, that's it. And he builds big fences to keep the dingo dogs out and all this kind of stuff,
Really?
And
you must have a lot of time in your hands to read some of this stuff. Where do you find this stuff?
Well, no, this was a programme. It was on... He's been made here. Talking about programmes, I saw a show on Shergar. Yesterday evening. Incredible show. Our old friend Derek Thompson was involved in it. It's about the kidnapped Shergar. But the 1981, get this, Mike, fantastic fact, the 1981 derby, which Shergar won by a record length of 10 lengths, right, at the Epsom derby, and I know Epsom so well.
Yeah.
The guy who finished second thought he'd won because as they came round Tottenham Corner, I'm not joking, Tottenham Corner, Shergar accelerated so fast and hit the winning post so quickly that the jockey who finished second thought he'd won because he thought the horse had dropped back. No, he thought he'd dropped back.
Right.
Shergar accelerated so fast he didn't see him go.
In mud by the time they get
exactly,
up there,
all the mud splattered over your goggles and all that. Anyway, look, we digress.
Amazing story. Yeah. Well, we won't talk about Shergar, but
no.
we forget as well the romance of the FA Cup. Everton have played Swansea. We should mention that coming up on Sunday. Are you going to that one?
I'm going up.
It's a 1:30 kickoff.
Yeah, I'm going up and down on the train.
Are you?
So I'm getting a bit worried because if the weather's bad, trains are extremely vulnerable to falling trees.
To the West Coast line on Wednesday night. I mean, the trains just stopped running. They just said we're not running it. There were people stuck on the East Coast main line for hours and hours on end.
Yeah, my train goes 8:15 in the morning out of Euston. It's allowed 3 hours because they have engineering works at the weekends and all that. So if it goes 3 hours, I get there at 11:15. Plenty of time for the 1:30 kickoff. Yeah. But I do fear delays. That must be the most frustrating bit. Getting there when the game's finished, you know what I mean? Then you've got to come back again. But
that's the other thing. And also Goodison, the game was called off because apparently there were chimneys and stuff falling off around. We were listening to Beaky actually saying that, obviously around the ground, there's quite a lot of old buildings, a lot of old sort of terraced houses.
I'll tell you what it is. There's a pub opposite called the Winslow. And funny enough, it's where I used to go and see Wayne Rooney's dad and have a drink with him after the games. I mean, you'd have to say, with the kindest interpretation, a bit of a rough house. You know what I mean? Not that I'm saying that Wayne Rooney's father are associated in rough
Not
houses,
the sort
but
of place that you and I would find ourselves in.
well,
normally.
yeah, you might do, but it's a typical Everton pub. Anyway, the point of the story is it closed down some time ago. It's got all metal shutters over the windows and all that, and the building has become dilapidated. And it was the chimney stack on that building that
was
came
it?
off. Yeah,
Right, it landed on somebody's BMW apparently.
that's real bad
Lucky you
news.
didn't take the car up there.
But funny enough, I was at an Everton game recently, an away game recently, and I met a couple of businessmen who want to buy that building, and they want to turn it into a commercial premises, offices and all that, but retain an Everton supporters club on the ground floor. So that's good. That's good. Anyway, look, we're talking about Valentine's Day, Mike, and what's that famous expression? Roses are red, violets are blue.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the rest
You
of that.
can make
rhyme?
the rest of it up.
You make the rest of it up, okay. But it got me to thinking about, if you're thinking about Valentine's Day, at this point of the season now where things can happen, and Roy Hodgson's talking about Rooney taking on the World Cup single-handedly and all that kind of stuff, I came up with a theory, which I investigated tonight, and it's called colour digression.
Right.
The colour
Is this
digression
something
theory.
you've come up with entirely on your own?
No.
Or have you found some academic study on this?
No, I'm sitting there, Mike, and suddenly my brain starts working. I'm thinking, why does this happen? Why does this happen? Now, what I'm talking about is this. When a player goes for a club in which he plays in a red jersey to a club that plays in a blue jersey, or vice versa, blue jersey to red jersey, he suddenly can't play. And that's called colour disparity syndrome, okay? Yeah, if your workplace is suddenly so different from your previous workplace, you get disorientated, okay?
But it's got something to do with the colour, though.
Well, of course it's got something to do with the colour. Because
Well, I mean, what if you go from a place where you used to play in a red shirt to a white shirt, for example?
No, it's red and blue. Apparently it's red and blue. Because red and blue are the primary colours in
What if
the...
you go from a place that plays in red to a place that plays in red and blue?
Well, no, not even that. But look, I'm going to give you some examples.
Zaha, for example, came from Crystal Palace to Manchester
Well,
United.
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this. Mata, right? He went from Chelsea blue to Manchester United red. So far, failure, right? Torres, biggest example of the lot, went from playing red Liverpool shirt to blue Chelsea shirt. Total failure, right?
So that's two cases.
Marian Fellaini
All right.
went from Everton blue to Manchester United red. Total failure.
All right, three cases.
Right, and I'll give you some more examples. Lukaku goes from Chelsea blue to Everton blue. Total success. What about this one? Van Persie goes from Arsenal red to Manchester United red. Total success.
All right.
So my theory is actually handing up. The colour disparity syndrome is absolutely a
load of old cobblers.
No. It absolutely stands
All right,
up
well,
when
what
you
about
look
Wayne
at it.
Rooney? He went from Everton blue to Manchester United red. You wouldn't describe him as anything but a success, would you?
A massive success, and then his debut for Manchester
so was
United.
he the exception that proves the rule then?
No, he was too young to have got fixated with colour disparity syndrome because
What?
he hadn't played enough games for Everton in a blue shirt to be attached to the colour blue to the extent where
What
it
about
would.
Lukaku? He hadn't played for Chelsea at all.
But Lukaku had been with Chelsea for years, even if he wasn't
Well, not
playing
for
in the
years.
first
He'd only
team.
been there for a
He
bit.
was playing in reserve teams. What I'm saying is, because your team plays in blue or plays in red, you go into your workplace. Like, for instance, you go to Chelsea's training ground in Cobham, it's completely blue. If you go to Manchester United's training ground, Carrington, it's completely red.
Yeah.
So it completely knocks you off sync. It disorientates you. You suffer from colour disparity syndrome, and you can't get your act together. Imagine Fellaini leaving Finch Farm, Everton's training ground, which is completely blue, and going to Carrington, completely red. Imagine Torres leaving Liverpool's training ground. Is it still Melwood? I can't remember where it is now.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been there. And he goes to Cobham, which is completely blue. He's disorientated.
So what's the cure? Is there no cure for this?
Well,
then?
there's
What have
not.
you worked out whether there's a cure?
Well, what they should do is they should get psychologists to get these guys to where,
Get
like,
psychologists to have a look at your inside your head is what they should get. That would be a very worthwhile study.
No, they should get psychologists and they should say, right, when the boy comes for the first 6 weeks, we're going to put him up in a mansion because that's what footballers live in.
Right.
But paint the inside of the mansion the colour of their new club, so that seriously,
That is the most ridiculous thing I've heard.
It's not
Now,
so
listen,
they
it's a
become
fa-
associated with it.
It's a fascinating thing you come up with, but here's another example for you. How about Cardiff City, right? Cardiff City, the Bluebirds played in blue for their entire lives, apart from very early, I think, in the 19th
Absolutely
century.
right.
However, they changed their shirts to red, right? And they got promoted from the Championship.
And where are they now?
Well, they're in the Premier League.
No, they're rock bottom of the Premier League.
Well, they're not rock bottom. They're Fulham are rock bottom. But, I mean, they're still...
They're rock
but
bottom of the Premier League.
They got promoted playing in red.
Yeah, but that was because the shock syndrome, the disorientation...
It takes a while, does it?
Of course it does, and it hadn't settled in them. But, of course, it's now coming home to roost. But I think you'll find, Mike, that, and most football fans out there will agree with me, that the sudden... I mean, for instance... the only thing red that I can tolerate in my life is Heinz tomato ketchup, or a tomato, which obviously is red.
Right.
You know,
Which you like to put on toast. Although you can get black tomatoes now, you know.
I didn't know that. But
You might prefer black tomatoes.
But the
if
point
you
of
don't
my
like the colour
story
red.
is no. The point of my story is that all my house is blue. The carpet's blue, curtains are blue and yellow stripes. The tile work in the bathrooms are blue. Everything's
Is there a
blue.
particular shade of blue? Is there an Everton blue?
Well, royal blue, a bit of powder blue for contrast, a bit of dark blue, a bit of silver because Everton have a streak of silver in their strip, and yellow, blue and yellow striped curtains, which are lovely. And what I'm saying is, most people only feel comfortable in an environment. I mean, if my house was red, I couldn't live in it. And I'm not being disrespectful to
red's not
Liverpool
a
or
colour
Manchester
you'd want
United.
in your house really much anyway, is it?
Well, some people do. People who are supporters of those clubs do have a lot of red around, don't they? They have red and white scarf. They might have a red car. They might have. But red to me is always a colour which has sort of. What's the word I'm looking for? I've rejected. My system rejects sort of red. I mean, I could never wear a red jumper or a red shirt or anything like that. And I think it is
have a red face.
And this colour disparity no, I don't have a red face. This colour disparity syndrome is a very pertinent factor within all our lives, which nobody knew about until I was sitting there thinking.
What about Red Bull? You drink a lot of that.
Oh, look, that's ridiculous. Red Bull comes in a blue can anyway.
Yeah, but it's called Red Bull.
Yeah, but it's a complete contradiction of itself. But anyway, look, if you can't take this seriously, we better move on.
No, I can take it seriously. I'm going to ask you about international football. I don't know whether you've expanded it into international football because, of course...
Well, you only ever play for one team at international level.
Yeah, no, I know, but you can
In
play,
one coloured shirt.
Yeah, but if you're an Italian player, for example, you play in blue. So what if your club team is a red team and you have to play international football in blue? Which one is going to work better?
Well, it doesn't matter then, because what happens is that is an individual occasion when you have to reset your mind to playing in a different environment because you're playing for your country, not for your club. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
Whereas week in, week out, it takes years, if not longer, for you to associate yourself with the colour of the club with which you're playing.
Thing about this theory,
if
though,
for a decade you've played for
the
somebody
interesting
else.
thing about this theory is like Frank Lampard, John Terry, all those guys who would play for Chelsea and go and play for England, sometimes in a red shirt, because they do sometimes now play in a red shirt.
Yes,
I
they
wonder
do.
if we should track and see whether their performances have been affected or impaired in any way.
Well, I suppose the biggest example is 1966, obviously, in a World Cup final. Ray Wilson was left full-back. Who did he play for? Everton. They play in blue and had played in the FA Cup final at Wembley just 3 weeks, actually, before the World Cup final. So it didn't affect him because it was international duty and you have a different mindset towards it. But there's no doubt about it. There is something there. There is something there. There's got to be. Why do so many players, when they change the colour of the shirt... I mean, look, you were going on about red and blue stripes and all that. What about Andy Carroll leaving Newcastle and going to Liverpool? Out of a black and white striped shirt into a red shirt, didn't make it.
Yeah, that's just because he was not as good as he ought to have been for that kind of money. Anyway, interesting theory. Porky Parry's theories are always interesting. They very rarely bear examination, but you can join in and send us some examples of how it doesn't actually work. Text us to 81089, email via the website talksport.com. More from the two mics coming next. This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. We are the two Mikes. There'll be an iTunes podcast available in a few hours' time. There's quite a few texts and emails coming, Mr. Parry, on your theory, but we'll get to those towards the end of this hour. Let's talk about the size of your brain, though, now, because there's a study done by Cambridge University Boffins.
I've seen that.
This is a proper study. You know, this is one which actually involves scientific research. And what they've discovered is that it's actually true to say that men and women's brains are completely different in a variety of ways, including the fact that the cerebellum, which is the part that kind of, is all about movement and coordination, is actually bigger in a man's brain than it is in a woman's brain.
But I saw that report and I thought, what a load of cobblers this is. Well, because men physically are bigger than women, so they're bound to have bigger brains.
Well, generally speaking.
And when I say bigger, I don't mean better. I mean, mass size of a man's brain is bigger than a woman's brain.
Well, that's a ridiculous thing to say, because lots of men and women are lots of different sizes.
Yeah, but I think this is a very sexist report, and I think it's stupid.
Sexist.
For instance, I believe sincerely the best drivers out there on the roads are women, not men.
Really?
Because, women are not aggressive, they're not macho.
Some women are very aggressive
They don't drive with their
I was married
fist
to a
on.
woman who was a very aggressive driver.
Well, that's the sort of people you associate with.
Well, no, she kept writing off my car.
She's got what?
And she wrote off 3 of my cars.
Off 3 of your cars?
Yeah. And she would always blame somebody else.
That's a liability.
She actually wrote one of them off in a Waitrose car park. She wraps it round a pillar.
Yeah, it wouldn't be after she'd found that, perhaps your concentration towards her and your marital status had wavered that day or anything like that, had it?
No, absolutely nothing to do with that.
Oh, really? How did she punish you for those sort of things?
Well, she just punished me financially, I think.
Right, I see, Just went off with a credit card and bankrupted you. Yeah, well, you deserved it. But no, I didn't. I saw this, and I know you got excited about it. Other people were saying. To me, it makes complete common sense. Why do you think there are more women secretaries than there are men secretaries?
Well,
It's
that's because there's a sexist thing going on in the world,
No.
which is changing as time goes
rubbish.
on.
Women are more dexterous. Women's fingers.
Well, no, that's
were
precisely what
better.
they don't say, that men actually are better at coordination because they've got a bigger cerebellum.
Yes, I know, but men have bigger fingers than women. So if you're using something like an old-fashioned typebwriter, and this is where it all historically
nobody's
came
using
from.
them.
No,
Well, no, that's rubbish. The
no,
reason
it's
that
not
women- no,
rubbish.
the one-
Women's fingers are more slender and longer.
No, the reason that women became secretaries to a large extent in the 50s after the war, when people started employing women to work, was because there was such a sexist situation going on that nobody ever thought that women could do a man's job. Now, thankfully, that's all changing, and there are women doing men's jobs all over the place.
I'm
You get
sorry,
women
Mark.
fighter pilots, you get women, ships captains, you
Mark,
get women
I'm sorry.
as airline pilots. You know, you're living in a dark age.
I'm sorry, but you've got this completely and utterly wrong. Can I tell you where you've got it wrong?
How have I got it wrong?
Right, you said immediately post-war, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. It was during the war that we suddenly discovered that women could do men's jobs in a fantastic way.
But it didn't carry on, did it? It didn't carry on
yes,
after
it did.
the war.
Men had to go to war and women had to take up the slack at home. So they
Yeah.
had to go into factories,
Yes.
manufacture
Yeah, I know
weapons
that.
and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
but how
Do you-
many of those women were still employed in those factories after the men all came home?
Well,
No.
of course it reverted. But what I'm saying is,
And why
this,
did it revert?
this
Because
country.
the men were better, or because the women were considered to be less, able to do it, even though they'd been doing it?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the men came home deciding to start families because they were looking to survive the war. So women then stayed at home as working mothers. Now, one of the reasons Germany lost the war, there are quite a lot of reasons why Germany lost the war.
There were.
Hitler was mad, and that was the main reason.
Yeah.
But also, of course, they overstretched themselves. But another reason was, Mike, at no time would German society accept that the gaps that were left by their troops going to war could be filled by women, because in those days, it was the Aryan obsession with women staying at home and bringing up children and men going out and being the bread earners, even if that meant they were soldiers fighting a war.
Yeah, well-
and that's another reason why we won the war. That was
this is
the
all
war
very
spirit.
fascinating. I'm far more interested in this study of the brain, because the brain is something that still we know very little about. You
Yeah.
know, we still, despite what we can do with science, we still have no real idea of how large parts of it work. And what they say is that they found in this study that many women are better at hearing and listening and concentrating
That's
on what other
absolutely
people
true.
are saying, which is true, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't ever listen to a word I say half the time. And
Well,
that's
you
certainly
never
true.
say anything worth listening to, but anyway,
And,
go on.
Now, it says that women have more grey matter in something which is called the Heschel's gyrus, which is associated with hearing. I bet you've never heard of that before, have you?
No.
It's right in the centre of the brain. And in the left frontal pole, women have higher density in this area, which is considered to be the brain's emotional control centre.
Yeah.
Which is why on Valentine's Day in particular, an awful lot of women will be later on this evening crying into their sort of dinner for two, because they'll say that, one, as a man, you don't listen to anything that I say,
I think-
and two,
yeah.
you're emotionally somehow stunted.
But once again, I think women are much more in control of their emotions than men. When a crisis happens in any family, who is normally the person who keeps the family together, holds it down, makes sure that the crisis is contained, that the children are protected? It's usually the woman, not the man. Men fall to pieces consistently over and over again. You know, if a chap comes home one night and says, "I've made a terrible mistake today, darling. I've ruined us. My business has gone. It's collapsed. I've got to sell the house. I've got to take the children out of private school. I fear that, we're ruined." He'll be all in bits and take to the bottle and, try to drink himself to death, whereas the woman believes, I've got to hold this situation together for the sake of the family and do it. So, I don't agree with a lot of this report about this daft brain theory.
Well, it's not a question of believing it or agreeing with it. It's a question of just understanding it.
I do understand it.
It's not a scientific study which is up for debate. They're just saying that the male and female brains, which I think we've all known for a long time, are very, very different creatures.
I know, but I mean, if you've got a problem, Mike, you don't talk to your best mate about it, do you? You go and talk to a woman about it to try and get it solved. And, you want comfort thing and healing. Well, you don't, because you always end up, sort of romantically pursuing a woman, and that's to your
So
detriment,
you've
Mike.
got a lot of women friends, is that what you're telling me?
I have got a lot of women friends, yes. I have, yes.
So whenever you have a problem, you go and talk to these women friends?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do, yeah. And I find that they're very intellectually able to absorb the pressures, the stresses, the enduring pain of a situation better than men.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I'll have to talk to some of these women at some point. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to get to half the things we wanted to get to because of your rant about the Second World War, which I didn't expect you to do. But thank you very much for that.
And it was factual.
Coming up next, Mike Porky Parry is going to give us a list of some of the greatest guitarists in the world.
Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions Millions of people living as ho-ho-hos. Yeah, but maybe it's not too late.
I know this song.
This
That's
is-
Apache.
It's the Shadows, isn't it?
It's the Shadows, it's Apache. They did two great ones. Apache, this one, and the other one was Foot Tapper.
Technically speaking, well, I don't want to hear you do it. No, but I don't want to hear you. I do not. You'll fall off the chair if you don't
Yeah, well,
I don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
you to do it like that. Technically speaking, of course, it's not a song. There's not many words in it.
Well, it's a what do you call it? Instrumental, okay?
It's a tune.
But listen, I'll tell you why the producers put that on. Now, you won't believe this. I've seen this list of the world's greatest ever guitarists,
Yes.
you know? So, who would you think?
Who's done this list then?
Well, it's done in the Times, actually. So that's pretty authoritative. The Thunder, one of the world's most famous newspapers. In fact, the paper of the empire. Well, we had an empire. I haven't got an empire anymore, obviously. But it's still known as the Thunderer. Now, you know, you would think of people like...
Well, you'd think it would be somebody from one of the great bands of all
Well,
time, like Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin.
Thank you. Jimmy
Eric
Page, Eric Clapton, Brian May of Queen, George Harrison and all this kind of stuff, right? Now, number one is Jimi Hendrix, and nobody would argue.
That's not a surprise, I suppose, is
It's
it?
not a surprise. And also, some bloke who you know, used to fiddle around in his workshop in Cambridge invented a foot pump for Jimi Hendrix, which he attached to his guitar, so apparently he could play back on the resonance of the strings
about
or
the
something.
reverb.
I don't know what. Sorry, I don't know anything about guitars, but apparently that made him brilliant. Now, so he's number one, 20 best guitarists in the world. Guess who number two is? Hank Marvin.
Hank Marvin's number two.
Hank Marvin's second greatest guitarist ever.
So who's come up with this list then?
Well, as I say, the specialists at the Times.
So it's just a Times list. It's not like
No,
it's not by popular vote or anything like
here
that.
Jimi Hendrix crowned greatest pop axeman of all time. I thought he was a guitarist, not an axeman. It says greatest pop axeman. Modern electric playing for his incredible performance. Right, here we go. Now, Eric Clapton is not even in the list.
What?
Not even in the
Well,
list.
it's a ridiculous list then.
Yeah,
surely.
the Times Pop School, Bob Stanley, Times writer, musician, and author of the acclaimed The Story of Modern Pop, picks the 20 best guitarists.
How
Now,
can he pick 20 guitarists and not have Eric Clapton in there?
hasn't got Eric Clapton in it. Right, what about this?
Well, let's run through who he's got.
Well,
then.
Jimmy Page is only number 10.
Right.
Apparently, one of the most brilliant guitarists of the modern age is Prince. Now, Prince
Well,
is only
Prince is a pretty
5'1".
good guitarist,
He's only
yeah.
5'1",
Yeah.
so the guitar's almost as big as him. Who could pull the clip-clean Nile Rodgers-influenced funk of Kiss 1 minute and then Purple Rain the next? The Prince, apparently, and he's brilliant. But guess this. Guess what, Mike? This is the amazing thing. As you go through it all, Jimmy Page number 10, guess who number 19 is? This is incredible. It's Burt Weedon.
Well, why wouldn't he be in there? I
Well,
suppose you'd
don't
get
you
him into
remember
the top
Burt
20.
Weedon?
I do remember Burt Weedon.
Burt
He was the
Weedon.
first guy to have a single hit, I think, in the charts in the 60s.
Yeah, but get this. Old Burt Weedon used to wear a jumper and play an acoustic guitar, you know, and sing things like Down on the Range and all that kind of stuff. Get this. As Britain's premier session guitarist, he backed Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, Tony Bennett. The avuncular Londoner was evangelical about the guitar playing and wanted others to join the fun. So he wrote a book. Here, I'll get this right. This is brilliant. He wrote a book called Play in a Day in 1957. It is now acknowledged as a starting point for the full flower of British rock to come. Without Burt Weedon's generous guidance, Britain would have remained a pop backwater.
Well, that may be true, though, because he was a big influence on all sorts of guitarists in the 60s.
Many of the greatest session musicians and guitarists ever since started their careers by buying a copy of Play in a Day. So, maybe
Well,
Keith
so
Richards.
he's the godfather of
Yeah.
modern rock and roll in Britain, then.
Maybe Keith Richards went down his local W.H. Smith's and, hey, man.
Well, Keith
give me
Richards has actually said that Burt Weedon was an influence of his.
hey, man, give me a copy of Play in a Day, man. And then he went off and lit a spliff or something and read it, and all of a sudden became one of the world's great
Well, I don't know why you're being
guitarists.
so dismissive of Burt Weedon. I mean, he was obviously a very
Burt
big
Weedon.
influence. I don't know why you get so excited about this.
Burt
either.
Weedon, what a
are you
strange
shouting
name.
for?
I'm
Now, listen,
shouting, yeah,
have
go
you
on.
ever tried to play a musical instrument?
Yes.
What did you play?
I-
Did you
I-
have music lessons at school as a youngster?
Only a couple of years ago, I took up the violin.
Really?
And yes,
I
and
used to play the violin.
Did you? And I went and had lessons because my endearing ambition, Mike, is literally to walk into a pub in Ireland with my fiddle under my arm and order a couple of drinks for everybody, and then say, right, I want to give you a rendition, and then stick the fiddle under my chin and play diddly dee diddly 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 diddly.
So did you learn what the four strings of a violin are then?
I can't remember.
Really?
No.
How many lessons did you have?
About 4.
4 lessons.
And I realised
Did
it
they
was
not
a take.
teach you what the strings were?
Probably, but I can't
You can't
remember.
even have a go at naming 4 strings on a violin.
On a piano, I can play. Oh, can you wash your father's shirt? Oh, can you wash it clean? Oh, can you
I don't
wash
even know
your
that
father's shirt and take it to the Queen? Yeah, I know how to play that.
I've never even heard of that
Well, you play
song.
it with one finger and it's hitting all the black
So
notes.
I'll just take the
black
answer
keys.
that no, I can't play a musical instrument.
Well,
I
not
used
very
to
well.
play the violin.
Not
I
very
used to
well.
actually go to the Royal Academy of Music and take
Oh,
exams.
rubbish.
Yes, I did. I'll show you I'll show you the certificates.
Well,
if
hang
you
on.
like.
If we brought a violin in here now, would you be able to make a noise on it?
Yeah, I could, but I haven't played it for many years.
Yeah.
But I used to play classical music on it. Yeah. When I
Is
was-
that
when I
right?
was a
Yeah, that's pretty good.
youngster,
What about the guitar? Do you ever try the guitar?
I tried the guitar. I could never play the guitar. No.
No, I never tried it, but we had Brian May in the studio once. What a fascinating man he is.
I was
And we-
here at the time. I remember it.
Oh yeah, and remember he told us afterwards when we got out there. And we said, "How's it going?" And he said, "I'm in the search for old sixpences
yeah.
because the plectrum
right.
he used was the only thing that resonated for him was an old sixpence,
An old-fashioned sixpence.
an old-fashioned
yeah.
sixpence."
And he
which
says he's got bags and bags of them at home.
yeah, but apparently, you know,
Starting to run out.
he's starting to run out. That's right. He's looking for more sixpences.
Amazing. And Queen, I think, actually achieved the biggest sale of any album of all time just the other day, I think.
Greatest hits.
Yeah, the greatest hits.
I
It's
read
gone up
that.
to like 6 million or
I
something
read a
like that.
feature somewhere about that saying that, you know, their enduring legacy. They're like ABBA, really. But, you know, new generations of music fans come along, suddenly listen to them and go retro, and suddenly, you know, their music will live on forever. But it will, because Freddie Mercury was such a genius, wasn't he?
He really was, but they won't live on forever. It won't improve because I mean, all people will do is play the old music as opposed to they haven't got. They've tried having new singers. It doesn't really work, does it?
Tried what, sorry?
They've tried having new singers. It doesn't really work.
Who?
Like Queen.
No, of course not. Excuse me,
What
no.
do you think we're talking about?
No. After Freddie Mercury died, they got that bloke who sung All Right Now.
Yeah.
What's his name?
From Free.
All right now.
Well, they had a
baby,
variety.
it's
This is not a sign for you to start singing. In fact, I'm going to get off the musical thing as well.
Okay.
This is, whenever we talk about music,
Yeah.
you always end up singing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
ridiculous. I wanted to ask you about what I mentioned earlier about the football boots that I found on the street
Now-
because I found it staggering that somebody would, I think, just take their football boots off, think about putting them in the car, and then drive off without putting them in the boot.
Yeah, but hang on. Some poor little kids now without boots. Have you put out a public appeal to get them back
Well,
to
I
him?
haven't. No, it won't be a kid. I mean, it's somebody who plays five-a-side football across the street.
Well, hang on. They can cost up to £60 or £80
No, well,
boots
that's why I'm
these
so
days.
surprised they were left there.
So have you put out a public appeal?
Well, no,
to...
I said on the air that they were there.
Right.
I mean, I just left them there. What was,
Well, have you sent out a tweet saying
No.
boots found outside
No, I haven't.
Talksport Towers?
No, I haven't.
Well, you should.
Well, no, I'm not going to do that.
What are you gonna
because
do with the boots,
people-
then?
Well, I'm just going to leave them there.
Have you not picked them up off
No,
the street?
I didn't pick them up. No.
Where
Is that
are
what
they?
I should have done? They're outside the office.
Well, that's
Why,
a
you must have parked your car out there, didn't you see him?
No, I ran over a brown bottle actually in the gutter. Yeah, I know. I'm not having much luck, am
Your
I?
car has got like
I know.
an unerring way of finding
I
bottles.
know. I heard this smash.
You better check the tyres when you go
but,
back out.
Mate, I'm
well,
seriously.
When you go back out, maybe they'll be still there.
What a dereliction of social responsibility. Some poor guy's left his boots outside on the
it's his own
street
fault,
accidentally. It's not his own fault. I'm going to bring him in and give him to our security guy downstairs. And also,
No, because if you had left them there,
I'm going to tell the
and you-
breakfast producers they should say in the morning, we've got a pair of boots here, fellas. Somebody's left them.
Well, to be honest, if you'd left something behind and then thought to yourself, I wonder where those boots are, you would drive back and you would look on the street. You would not think of knocking on every single door.
Like somebody's going to steal those boots when light comes up in the morning, and they'll be gone. And that poor man,
Well,
and
maybe
you
he's
could
got
rescue the
insurance for
boots.
his boots.
I think you're a disgrace. I mean, you have an obligation to your fellow man to try and help the poor lad. I mean, those boots might
That's
have
not
only.
true. If I found a wallet or something like that, I would bring it inside, and then I would try and find somebody something in there to get hold of the guy. But there's nothing on the boots to say who belongs to.
Oh, how do you know?
Well, because it doesn't say anything.
Have
on
you
them.
looked inside them?
No, I haven't looked inside.
Well, they might have a name inside them, mightn't
well,
they?
then you can do that since you're such a great Samaritan. This could be your
I'm
new
going
mission,
to.
mission in life.
I'm going to. And anyway, what a lot of footballers do these days is they put their name in indelible ink on the sole of their boots so that they don't get lost in the dressing room.
I don't think it's Didier Drogba that's left them there. I mean, it's somebody who just plays
Well, you
football
didn't even bother
once
looking.
in a while.
I think that's a terrible dereliction of your social responsibility
Really?
to your fellow man. Those
Oh,
boots
so
are probably.
what? So when you find things on your very many travels around Epsom Downs, what do you do with them then? What have you
Well,
found?
if you see a little kid's teddy bear or something like that, you stick it in a tree. And if you see somebody's scarf or a coat or something, you put them on a bush or something like that.
Oh, so it's not where they left it then. So they'll never find it again.
Well, it's right next to where they left it on the ground. You didn't leave it on the ground because it gets wet, do you? Do you know what happened to me
Oh,
once?
yeah, it doesn't get wet if you put it in
I'd,
the bush. That's true.
I'd just
because
come-
the bush is completely impervious to water.
I'll ignore that. I'd just come back from my second stint in America, and I started work here with another newspaper. And on about day 3 or 4, and your head's full of things, you know what I mean? I got in the
How
car.
to manage to keep the job, mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. How to keep this job for 4 days. No, absolutely right. And I drove home, and I was actually living at my sister's place down in Kingswood in Surrey, because I'd, just come back and bought a new place or something like that. And I went to the car, and I thought, that's funny. I don't know, my briefcase has gone. In those days, carry around briefcases around with, like, contacts books in them and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Did you go sandwiches and everything?
No, not sandwiches, no. And anyway, I thought, that's really odd. I don't know. Anyway, as I was looking around for it, the phone went. It was the newspaper HQ. They'd had to close the car park. They were literally reported to the police because a stray black briefcase had been found in the car park.
That's what they call a bomb squad.
Yeah, absolutely. In a space where there was no car. And what I'd done is, I'd gone there, and because it was a new car as well, I'd put the case down, fiddling around looking for my keys, how do you open this car? And then, with my mind all over the place, I got in the car, drove off, and left the case. Seriously. Yeah. And it caused terrible havoc.
Done, but you see, that's another example of people meddling with it. If you'd remembered, you'd just gone back and got it. Whereas now you go back, and suddenly there's this whole kind of, everything's been closed off and closed down. The best thing, I think, for a lot of things is you leave it where it is, leave it where you see it. If you move it, people sometimes never find it again.
OK, so I see. So you leave your mobile phone on a table in a pub, right?
Yeah.
And
I've never done that.
No, I've never done it, thank God. And you go out and you walk up the street, and then 10 minutes later, as you're about to get on a bus or a train or get in a cab or something, oh no. And do you honestly think if you went back that would still be there? Of course it wouldn't.
No.
Of course. Hey, have you ever had your...
But if somebody had handed it in behind a bar, then maybe it would be there. But normally what happens...
Yeah, the chances are somebody would have nicked it.
I have lost my phone once in a while, and if normally when people find it, they go through the numbers and they phone somebody that they think might know.
Oh, I've never had that.
And I've actually got them back a couple of times.
Oh, I've never had that. I tell you what, I did have once down on the coast. I was leaving to come back to London. I thought, where is my wallet? And halfway back, I tried to rack my brains.
I've often wondered that.
Yeah, sorry?
Where your wallet is.
Yeah. Oh, that's very kind of you. And I rang the pub that I'd been in the previous day. Luckily, got a car phone that, is hands-free. And they said, yeah, we found your wallet yesterday, Mr. Parry. We know it's yours because it's got your press card in it. I said, so I had to turn around and go back. But talking about briefcases again, I had a few drinks in town one night. This was before this incident when I left in the car park. And I got home, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone went, and the station master at Horsham Station rang and said, oh, is that Miss Parry? I said, we've got your briefcase. I said, what do you mean you've got my briefcase? My briefcase is in the hall of my house here. I don't think it is. So I got up and said, no, it's not. Why have you got it? He said, oh, we found it on the overhead rack on the train. I don't know where you got off, but when you got to Horsham, it was still there, and it's got your business card in. So how lucky was that?
How lucky. Now, we could talk about all of these kind of things for a long time, but let's go back to your original theory, because we've got loads and loads of people who have texted into 81089 and commented on your alleged theory. And here's one.
Colour disparity syndrome?
Yeah, here's one from Georgie Wallacey. He says, what about Ashley Cole, Chelsea to Arsenal? Hawkey must remember Everton's Johnny Morrissey from Liverpool to Everton. He was a big plus. And Dave Hickson. And what about Trevor Francis, Birmingham to Nottingham Forest? And he says, I am an Everton fan as well, but you're up the paddle without a creak on this one. Lots of people have said Daniel Sturridge as well from Chelsea to Liverpool.
Do you know where up the paddle without a creek comes from?
Yeah.
Haslar Creek.
Don't try and change the subject.
No. Haslar Creek, the last Royal Naval Hospital in this country, down at Portsmouth, of course, and it was such an infamous place because they used to take the sailors in there.
Changing the subject.
Hang on, patch them up and then send them out to fight in the Napoleonic Wars again. And the expression was, you're up the creek without a paddle, i.e., once you're in Haslar, you're back in the Navy.
I don't believe that. Here's another one. Sergio Aguero, Atletico Madrid playing red and white, and they he went to blue. Ian Robin, Chelsea to Bayern Munich. Craig Bellamy, City to Liverpool. Tevez, Man United to City. Phil
But they
Neville,
all had their problems.
United to Everton.
They all had their
They've all
problems.
been a great success.
They all had their problems.
I'm afraid it sounds as though your entire theory is not just up the creek without a paddle.
No.
It's down the toilet.
All I can say is Mata, Torres, Fellaini all proves it. Lukaku, Van Persie proves it the other way. I've got the evidence. All you've got is a load of disparate theories from valued and very knowledgeable listeners who, unfortunately, have not put the bits of the jigsaw together.
So you say they're knowledgeable, but they don't know what they're talking about, which is a very familiar state of affairs for us right here at Talk Sport. Mr. Mike Parry, thank you very much indeed. He'll be back, of course, on Monday after the FA Cup weekend.